Cloudcast Media.
Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community Show, amplifying the voices of social impact organizations, entrepreneurs, local nonprofits, and other community champions who shape the culture, creativity, and connectivity of San Diego. Brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union, bringing good things to San Diego for over 60 years. Learn more about what is good for you and good for all by visiting www.missionfed.com.
I'm Drew Schlosberg of Cloudcast Media, and so we are so pleased to have in the studio with us today Chris No, Director of Community Partnerships for Math Happens. I saw this, I go, I got a million questions for Chris. How you doing, Chris?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm just thrilled to have you in the studio, joined by my associate producer, Brandon Joe. He has been doing this for quite a while on the Spotlight Show and other Cloudcast Media podcasts. He is his own CEO of a organization he started called Treasure. What's it? Treasure Hacks. Oh my God, I forgot about it for a second. And he's finishing up his junior year at UCSD. How you doing, Brandon?
Doing good.
Absolutely. So, what's the mission of Math Happens Foundation?
Yeah. The mission of Math Happens Foundation is to create engaging, inspiring mathematical experiences for families of young children outside of the classroom. So we're in museums, community centers, libraries, places where you sort of don't expect to run into math, or at least, when you think of math, you think of school. We're trying to break that narrative a little bit and have really, really fun, hands-on, engaging ways to experience it outside of the classroom.
You said math in museums?
Absolutely.
What do you mean? What do you mean math in museums?
That's a great question. Math Happens has been around since 2014, based in Austin, Texas. And just this year, we started doing things here in San Diego. And one of the places that we just, as of yesterday, kind of signed up on an informal program is to be at the Fleet Science Center every Sunday from 11 to 2 o'clock. So that's a museum that we're at, but around Texas, around Minnesota, other places throughout the country.
Yeah, and I'll educate my young associate producer. It's no different than what science has been up against for many, many years. Oh my God, I got to learn from a textbook. By the way, science is in your life 24/7, 365, and then 95 years of your life. It's every single day, as is math. And so it is. And what's great about it is that you're doing it outside of that textbook, outside of that classroom, because there is not a museum in the world that doesn't deal with math at one aspect of it. I'm so glad you mentioned the Fleet Center. They're frequent guests on the show. And we have a partnership with them as well. But I'm going to back up a little bit. Have you always been interested in math yourself?
Yeah, me personally, I've always been quote unquote good at math. And I think what that really has meant is I was quick at math, and so you do a time test. I put my pencil on the table first, right?
You and I'm 105 years older than you. I was always the first. We had those math sheets in first and second grade. Yeah. And I was always the first to finish, got them all right. And now I can't do 2 tin cans in the string, for God's sake, on that. So you always had an affinity for it.
Yeah. And when I was in high school, I went to High Tech High here in Point Loma.
Yeah,
and
great school.
Was inspired to be a teacher and went to teaching. But it was actually my humanities teacher who really inspired me. So I was like, I'm going to be an English history teacher. And I realized I didn't love it.
Did you teach in the district?
I taught in Chicago for a long time. That's where I went to school.
Oh, okay. Where'd you go?
Northwestern.
Great school.
Yeah,
Evanston, beautiful school.
I love Evanston.
Yeah.
Great town.
Yeah. So the teaching wasn't your gig then?
I taught for a while. I love schools. Despite Math Happens centering really not on schools, I think schools are such an important institution.
Absolutely.
And where a lot of the work of changing the narrative about math happens, I think there's just a huge opportunity when it's not attached to a grade, not attached to a Common Core state standard, that we have this world of math that we could explore. And teachers, who are often the facilitators, volunteers that come and help us out at our events, they're thirsty to talk about fractals, all sorts of fun math concepts, things that don't necessarily make it into the curriculum. They want to do that with kids and and this sort of stuff lets you.
So I spent quite a few years at San Diego Unified, and actually one of my first jobs was editing math curriculum, believe it or not.
Yeah.
And then gravitated to doing other types of things there and developing curriculum, and then over to UT and now doing this podcast stuff. But what was always interesting about it is, and the math people were a lot of fun, in this, and they always emphasize the same thing. I wish we could teach X. Okay. A lot of it has to do with the standards and all that business as well. But the classroom outside in Balboa Park, my goodness, you could teach in a curriculum. You wouldn't have to leave the park for 12 years, correct? And all that. So talk about that as well.
Yeah. So like here's what you would stumble upon if you saw us at Balboa Park, just as an example. Is there's tables, and it's best when it's intergenerational, right? So we've got a 5-year-old kid and a grandma, standing right there, and they're both kind of looking over and getting their hands on these materials. And let's say it's a bunch of shapes, ones that you might have seen in school, but now there's no prompt. There's no we're not solving a math problem with it. You're just playing with it. So you see kids making cat faces, or you see kids making hearts, or you see kids making things out of all the purple shapes. What can you make with just one shape? And just a quick anecdote is I saw a dad once walk by, and he with him and his young daughter, and I said, "Hey, why don't you stop by and play with us for a little bit?" It's like, "Oh, my daughter's only 3; she's too young to do math." And I was like, "Hold on, I have a 2.5-year-old at home. I'm like, come and just see what she can do." And he was blown away by all of the things she was thinking about, playing with, and none of it was a curriculum. None of it was me asking 10 questions. It was her just playing. And I think that dad really walked away with a different understanding of what math is and a different understanding of what kids might be capable of. That's the mission of our work.
Well, and it's huge. And, when we know this, that when you're learning that way, and, I'll pitch it over to Brandon, obviously with his major, math is all over it, to say the least, right?
Yeah, math, computer science. So it's a huge part of what I do. And it's just, I'm so fascinated. You say play. What does playing with math look like? You say shapes. I'm thinking like back when I was a kid, I have a bunch of magnetic triangles and squares I used to place together. But I'll play the fool. Yeah. How does that help me learn math?
That is such a good question. And I think defining play period is tricky to do, right? Is play tag? Is play, do there have to be rules? Do there have to be no rules? And we consider all of that when we design our materials. We often source them or make them ourselves. And for math play, I think it's about creating opportunities for there to be interesting conversations between facilitator and child, between parent and child. It's about facilitating the opportunity for those things to exist. You can't force play. The moment you say this activity is mandatorily fun is when it's guaranteed to not be fun, right?
And what's spot on this, and we've known this probably since we were walking upright. It just takes a while for us to get it into the curriculum. That when the students learn most is when they don't think they're learning because they're having fun, and we all know that. And you mentioned that's right. It's the communication from a facilitator to the student to whomever, and student to student. And you see this all the time. Those kids are going to learn just as much from themselves as they're playing around with stuff. Talk about that aspect too.
Right. So I'll give you an example because you were sort of asking how does it connect to real mathematics or math learning? And I'm putting air quotes. I know folks can't see that.
Right.
So at one of our events, we have these frames that you fill in with all sorts of different pattern blocks: a yellow hexagon, a red trapezoid, a green triangle. These might be familiar to folks in their own schooling. And a kid walked by and was like, "Well, I'm going to try to fill this all in with these red trapezoids." So they did that. Right? Really fun activity. Is it possible? Is it not? And then as this kid is doing this challenge that they made up, the kid next to them goes, "Well, I want to try that." And then so my job is basically to destroy children's work to let the next kid try it. So I dump this out. And I'm about to push them a bunch of new titles, and they're like, no, I want to do what they did. I want to try that challenge. So they do that, right? And I think the real work of mathematics, having been a math teacher for 10 years, what would I dream of in my classroom? Well, it's kids asking mathematical questions, going down their own rabbit holes, and having the community of people around them affirm that those questions are interesting by trying it themselves, trying out new versions. You better believe it didn't stop at the red trapezoid. It was like, I know that that's possible. Now can I try it with the yellow hexagon?
Oh my God. I remember doing problems like this back in school, back in my geometry class or my trigonometry class. There's questions like this. Even in college, I don't remember which class it was, but that's a common thing in general. And so it's fascinating when you say that. And I get it. I get it a little bit.
Well, anyone who's been around a curriculum for any time know that's how they're going to learn the most. We're chatting again with Chris Noe. He's the Director of Community Partnerships for MathHappens Foundation. I'm Drew Schlosberg of Cloudcast Media, listening to another edition of Drew Schlosberg's Spotlight on the Community Show, the nation's longest-running community podcast in our 19th year, brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union, 6 decades of doing great work. People living in San Diego County. Joined by my co-host for the show, Brandon. Joe is the associate producer of Spotlight on the Community. We all know about literacy, and people think about literacy. It's reading and writing and all that. But math literacy is equally important. Talk about that.
Yeah. I think that's sort of where our mission started, or like why this organization exists, is because there's this void, right? I'm a parent of 2 young children. They're both under 3. And I read to them every night. And I know I'm supposed to read to them every night. Whether bedtime allows me to do it is one story.
Well, so you're probably doing what I did. You're skipping pages. You go from 10 to 36 because you can barely keep your eyes open.
Oh, yeah.
Dad, you missed 11.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay, right. Right or wrong?
But it works. And you know what? I'm watching my daughter, identify letters, make sounds, put the idea of a love for reading in her life at age 2. What am I supposed to do when it comes to math?
Right.
We count. Okay, you ask anyone and they'll say counting. Okay, great. You count. Right. How? Now what? Right.
Right.
I think this idea of math literacy, numeracy, sometimes you hear that, but I think it's bigger than just numbers, which is why math literacy, I like that phrase more, is a thing that's missing from our collective identities as people. We often hear people say, I'm not a math person. They identify as not a math person. You don't hear people say, I'm not a reading person. Or at least, even if that's how they feel, they're not going to tell you that, in their introduction. I hear that a lot, though. I'm not a math person. I'm not a math person.
Well, it's interesting. When we come back from break, I want to talk about that because we are math people. We are science people. We just had a conversation with folks from Art Walk. We all are artists. It's just how we unlock it. Your kids are very fortunate they got you because you know how to do this stuff, and in not only in an academic way but in a fun way as well. And we all know this from the first time you take them to baseball games, and it's math all over the place, to say the least. And I think that's great. And when we get people to understand this, it's the same thing about in Europe. They're teaching foreign languages as soon as they can basically, speak. So we wait till we're in 9th grade before we start teaching foreign language, unless you're in an immersion class and all that. Math, you got to start right out of the gate and then get people unintimidated by math. So let's talk a little bit about that. And most important, I'm just so fascinated what you guys do. And what I wanted next time is when you come back in, maybe bring in some people that have benefited from it. Consider that's a done deal. We're going to have you do that. Maybe even your 3-year-old or something like that, or 2-year-old. They can talk about this. So think about that when we come back from break with Chris Noe. He is the Director of Community Partnerships for MathHappens Foundation. I'm Drew Schlosberg of Cloudcast Media, brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union. We will be right back.
When you do your banking with Mission Fed, you get great rates on auto and home loans. That's good for you, but something good also happens for a lot of other people. We're not for profit, so we put money back into the community to help lots of great nonprofits to keep San Diego strong. So you're not just getting something good, you're doing something good. Come to Mission Fed. It's banking that's good for all.
Brand amplification is the DNA of Cloudcast Media, and our code is the powerful blending of sound, voice, and storytelling to lift local brands and their communities. Whether it is our Brandcast, Schoolcast, or Causecast platforms, the unifying ethos is all about this community, the one you call home. If you dare to dream and want to explore the brand amplification of Cloudcast, a national leader in local podcasting and other Winfluence strategies, please visit us at cloudcast.us.
I'm Drew Schlosberg of Cloudcast Media, listening to another edition of Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community Show, nation's longest-running community podcast in our 19th year, brought to you by the fine folks at Mission Fed Credit Union, 6 decades plus, doing great things such as food insecurity, financial literacy, art, and all that business, joined by Chris No. He is the Director of Community Partnerships for MathHappens Foundation, joined by my colleague, Brendan Joe. He is the Associate Producer of the Spotlight Show. Brendan.
So, as you said, some people say I am not a math person. That's something I frequently hear from other people, and sometimes I say it myself when I'm doing my advanced level college calculus and all fun stuff. What do you have to say to someone who says I am not a math person? Because you're right. People don't say I'm not a reading person. People don't say, or in a similar way that we don't play games with our kids that involve like mathematics. We don't play games that involve like reading. There's just some sort of like bias against math inherently. Why? And what would you do to help reconcile with that?
Yeah, so many thoughts. I'll give you my hot take, just because I'll give you the inside scoop.
Please,
which
absolutely.
Is, if someone says I'm not a math person, my gut reaction is not to say, yes, you are. Because let's say you don't like something as an adult. If I were to say, yes, you do, yes, you are that person, you would say, you must have not heard me. I said I'm not that, right?
Right.
And so it's not through, yes, saying things in the affirmative is a part of the solution. But what I love about Math Happens is how we get the hands involved. We get the experience involved. We're not successful unless people are smiling, puzzled, curious, like those are the experiences that make a statement like, yes, you are a math person actually mean something versus a poster on the wall that says you are a math person. So my hot take here is that if you say you're not a math person, maybe I get it. I can envision how math may have made you feel quote unquote dumb or made you feel slow. And maybe you weren't ever placed in the honors class. Like all of these things, I wouldn't like something that made me feel small.
But, you're so right on that. Until you point out to them, okay, let me get this straight. You like shopping? Oh, yeah, I love shopping. Okay, you like buying cars? Yeah. Do you have to know a little bit about math when you shop and you buy? Yeah, I'm pretty good at percentages. I know what interests are and all that. Oh, okay. You're not a math person, huh? You probably saying that because, like Drew, I'm the poster child for this. I'm terrible at abstract math, okay? I'm a former sports writer, great at the numbers, okay, when it comes to stats and all that. I couldn't tell you what an isosceles triangle is from a trapezoid from the Pythagorean theorem, and I'm glad I can't, and so forth. But the point is, I wouldn't say as bad as I am in that area that it's not because I'm not a math person on that. Brandon?
But as you mentioned, it seems like it's part of the experiences. It's like almost a testing that like in this experience, I used math and therefore I'm like, I can use math. And so it's giving them the experiences or maybe reconciling with their past experiences that they have used it decently well outside of the classroom.
Yeah, there's 2 words that I've found helpful in talking about this. One is eliciting, right? So let's say I have an example, which is like at home when I cooked rice, I always learned that you should put your finger in the rice and let the water come up to your first knuckle.
Interesting.
You know, like that's the right
I'm going to
ratio.
try that one.
Yeah, try it.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because that, to me, is how you cook rice. And when you think about it in other ways, it's actually a really interesting mathematical idea. Like, that this ratio somehow will always be correct. Is that true? Is that true for just my
your
hand?
fingers grow, right?
Right, exactly. Is that true for my kids' fingers? Is that true for me?
Right.
So there's math we can elicit in the things that are already doing. I think a lot of the work of Math Happens is this other word that we say, which is layering, which is you're at Balboa Park. You're not necessarily expecting to run into an isosceles triangle, but hey, you did, and it's bright, it's colorful. You see that people are having fun there. That's the sort of work that I think is equally as important of like creating an opportunity for that conversation to happen. And for example, at the Fleet, we're at the IMAX atrium. So what was happening there before? Waiting to enter a movie theater or leaving a movie theater. And now there's this opportunity to do math.
So smart.
Yeah, shout outs to the Fleet Museum who put us there. And I was like,
well,
this
you
is
guys are
genius.
executing it. So,
Yeah.
I think what's great about what you're doing too, is there a certain age group you're shooting for? Is it more K6? Is it, even primary, K3, TK3? Or really anyone can learn it and like it, doesn't care what age you are.
Yeah, I would say a sweet spot is ages like 4 to 10.
Yeah.
And often this like caregiver child dynamic is really, I think, what we found to be super powerful. But it's actually really funny. Sometimes we've had like high school kids, college kids stop by the booth, and we have some puzzles that are sort of just endless in terms of like how much time you can spend with them. And they're like, I have to like shoo them off. Like, hey, you have to let some of the little kids play.
But Chris, it's so true. Again, chatting with Chris Noyes, Director of Community Partnerships for MathHappens Foundation. I'm Drew Schlosberg of Cloudcast Media. Seen another edition of Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community Show, brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union. Co-host Brandon Joe is associate producer of Spotlight. And so what you've established, of course, and we know this, they're having fun, right? And listen, there's really no reason except for maybe capacity that you're not in every single museum for that matter, right? They're going to go home now, okay? And I'm sure you heard stories about this all the time. Dad, can we continue that activity? Can we go and buy some of these? Can we go down to, Target and buy some X, Y, and Z so I continue it? Half the key is just going ahead. And yes, they're excited about this, but they're going to think about it and do it again. Talk about how important that is to continue that learning.
Yeah, I think that's why this caregiver dynamic is so interesting to watch it happen and to watch how little you actually need to recreate that magic. Well, the kinds of questions we're asking when we're facilitating are not these expert level vocabulary things that you've never heard before. It's, I noticed that you blink. Hey, I wonder what would happen if you blink. If caregivers can walk away knowing that those sorts of questions are the things that mathematicians ask and chase after, our job is done.
Right. So if we had the capacity to teach these types of things outside the classroom all the time, okay, you would see a different trajectory just in the qualitative study on how many people like math now, right? That would go off the board on this. And, we all know this, and I'm sure, it's being a mathematician yourself and being a math teacher, there's a ton of research, a zillion studies over the years of when kids are learning in a positive, warm, collaborative, nurturing, empathetic environment, they're going to retain that stuff forever. And I scratch my head when we don't do more of that. Correct?
Yeah. We are limited by our capacity, but we have capacity. So if folks listening are like, I have never considered how my space could help, think about this mission of like kids seeing themselves more in the community of mathematics, or I have space that's just sitting there. Families walk by it all the time. We do all of our programming at no cost to our partnerships.
Wow.
Yeah, we're a family funded.
That.
It's a foundation that's funded by the Siegel family. And so that is an amazing part of the work that people are always asking me like, and when are we, there's no catch.
Do you work with any of the music groups that we've had on quite a bit? Resounding Joy via Musica. And they're teaching people who've never played an instrument. Could be young, could be old, and all that business. But the focus here, 4 to 10, I guess. And being in that environment, because we all know how. Do you play music at all?
Yeah, I play a little guitar. You know, I don't know how under wraps this is. I'm sure it's not secret information, but the Fleet has their next exhibit, big exhibit, is going to be on music. And
no brainer.
We're having some conversations about, well, you know, what sort of mathematical ideas can we elicit there?
Yeah, no brainer. We're going to get them in and talk about that, you know. But we all know the connection between math and music. We talk about this all the time, and so forth. But just thinking about that, you know, and again, there's only so many of you and other people. How many people work and do this type of stuff that you do?
We are a small but agile team in terms of like full-time like operations folks. We're like 5 of us, and we're spread across the country. But we're trying to get stuff up and running here, so we're hiring.
So is there somebody at the Fleet that you do this every Sunday? Correct?
Yeah, we'll start that up in May. Is when we're
okay, great. And then as you do this, because you got to make sure you're not working 24 hours a day and all that business, are there other museums that you're looking at the Balboa Park? I mean,
there's at the Balboa Park, we're trying to make sure that we're not concentrating all of our efforts in one place, like geographically. Because who comes to Balboa Park? Well, folks with the membership to those places and tourists, probably a 50-50 mix. So we want to make sure that we're in like communities. So we're trying to reach out to places like up north in Escondido. There's a children's museum. There's obviously the new
our favorite museum, San Diego
Discovery.
They're on the show quite a bit. We love
and then
those guys.
Downtown Children's Museum.
How about the Midway? USS Midway.
Oh,
so
see?
they're good friends of ours.
Oh,
very, very good friends of ours.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, that'd be a blast.
Yeah. I mean, and you know, Classroom of the Future Foundation. I got to get you involved. Matter of fact, you're going to rue the day you came into the studio over here. I'm going to get you involved in everything, and then your wife will say, "Drew's babysitting the kids, so we can get away and do stuff." You know, Midway U was started many, many years ago working with Classroom of the Future Foundation because of all the math, all the science, all the history that comes out of that, you know, that ship and stuff. That's a place you should absolutely be. It's a no-brainer, you know.
Okay, yeah.
So we'll tee you up with that. What can we do? What can our listeners do to support the Math Happens Foundation?
They could reach out to me if they have any spaces in mind. Maybe you're a parent, maybe you're a grandparent who says, hey, I'm here all the time and I would love to see math in my community. Reach out to me. You might be a person who works at one of these places and you're looking for programming. And I'll say it again, we do our work at no cost to our partners. So if we're a good fit for each other, that's what we really care about, that we're missionally aligned.
That's good. What's the website?
Yeah, mathhappens.org.
Right.
And my email is cnho@mathhappens.org.
So be thinking about the next time you're on a show, because definitely want you to be on. And maybe a family or two of people that have, you know, enjoyed working with you on it. Okay. And we can't talk about this stuff enough. You know, it's really important. And I think shining a light on, especially on math, that people just want to run away from. Go, no, you're doing it anyway. Okay. And in this type of environment, is spot on. Chris, just what a pleasure chatting with you. Wishing you and the foundation nothing but great success. And we're going to look forward to having you back on.
Thanks. Thanks for the insightful questions. You could tell you really have, you know, an opinion and a lot of insight into this education.
Well, you'd be the only one saying that about me, but that's okay. It's on record now, so I appreciate that. Chris No, Director of Community Partnerships for Math Happens Foundation. I'm Drew Schlosberg. You've been listening to another edition of Drew Schlosberg's Spotlight on the Community Show. We are the nation's longest-running community podcast in our 19th year. Brought to you by the fine folks at Mission Fed Credit Union. 6 decades of doing great things for people living in San Diego County. We hope you enjoyed the interview.
You've been listening to an episode of Drew Schlosberg's Spotlight on the Community Show, amplifying the voices of social impact organizations, entrepreneurs, local nonprofits, and other community champions who shape the culture, creativity, and connectivity of San Diego community. Brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union, bringing good things to San Diego for over 60 years. Learn more about what is good for you and good for all by visiting www.missionfed.com.
Cloudcast Media.